The Pacers season is nearly here. It's time to start previewing the season for several players. We'll get to everybody at every position slowly, starting today with the point guards. Big questions for Tyrese Haliburton, TJ McConnell, and Andrew Nembhard on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Monday. Hope you had a great weekend, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today I want to start a series that will not take long and will come and go before preseason even starts, and that is a look at every Pacers player for a season preview, but a little different than in the past, mostly because there's a very unique opportunity to look at this a little differently because there's so much continuity. So instead of looking at players' roles and how things could change and what they could provide to a new team, because there's not that many players who fit that bill, I just want to ask a big question to every player. I did that with the veterans last week. We'll do it again today for the point guards, Tyrese Haliburton, TJ McConnell, again, and Andrew Nembhard. And we'll do it for every position prior to the start of the season. Looking forward to doing it this way because then I can really dive into stuff that I think is interesting and will matter a lot for the Pacers this year as they go on their fact-finding mission. Are we really that good? Can these young players stick with our success? And we will start with the point guards because that's the easiest way. We'll go 1 through 5. Stuff's going to start again this week for those unaware. You'll probably hear from some Pacers leaders this week, so be prepared for lots of news and lots of stuff here on this podcast about all that, and we'll sneak in these player previews and probably like top 100 lists and real GM or in GM surveys and all that good stuff along the way. And the Pacers are going to sign somebody. I reported that last week, and that'll come in our next news episode. Let's start with Mr. Tyrese Haliburton, who had quite the summer. And I have some little questions I want to briefly touch on before I get to my big one. But these ones are boring and are not like things I can provide data for or talk about for any sort of amount of time that actually reflects why I think it's interesting. But like, can he stay healthy? Is a very interesting question to ask about Tyrese Haliburton in the coming season. He played 77 games the year he got traded to the Pacers, 51 with the Kings, 26 with the Pacers, and probably would have played more if he didn't have to take the gap for actually being traded. Okay, that's a healthy season. 58 his rookie year, but it was a shorter season. 56 his first full season with the Pacers. Maybe could have played down the stretch a little more than that, but still. And then 69 last year, with a couple of those being very close to the 20-minute line. So not a full normal game for Haliburton, but still he played 69 games last year. And then, as Carlisle said on the radio, like before the last 3 games of the Olympics, so before the playoff part, he got hurt again, and Brian Windhorst reported that too. So now we have another injury for Haliburton. Can Haliburton stay healthy, right? He gets to He gets to January 2 years in a row and has gotten hurt at the same time. Can he stay healthy? That's a big question, right? There's not a lot to say about that beyond that. Will his shot come back? He shot well every year for his career from deep. He even shot mostly well last year, but only finished at about 36.5% from deep. That was his first year under 40 his whole career. Is he going to come back? He did up his volume to his career high volume, but not that much more than the year before. I expect it to bounce back, but will it? What does that look like as he progresses? And then the obvious, will he get better on defense? That's going to be a question for his whole career because that kind of does limit the ceiling of lineups with him. Not a ton. They're still among the best, 5 to 10 in the league. But if he could guard better, it would go a long way for the Pacers and the players that are allowed to play around him. Because right now they very much are leaning defense with the rest of their backcourt to cover for him in some certain situations. But that's not even my really main question with Haliburton, because I kind of think we know that this dude's one of the best 10, 15, even maybe a smaller number than that, best players in the NBA, looking to prove something, can guide a team far in the playoffs, can guide a team far in the in-season tournament, can lead a top 5 offense in just about any setting. I know all that stuff. I feel very good about that. What I don't know is, as he looks for more individual ascent, if that's even possible, right? I forget where it was, but he talked earlier this offseason in some interview setting about, continuing to prove people wrong and, finding ways to show people like, no, last year wasn't a fluke. We're going to be better than that. Well, one thing I've always wondered with him is, and I think this way with TJ Warren and Caris LeVert, I had this conversation about them with the Pacers. Can Tyrese Haliburton get to the free throw line? Can that be a thing that is added to his game? 3.3 free throw attempts per game last season, below the season prior with the Pacers. Per 36 minutes, he took 3.7 free throw attempts per 36 minutes. Last year, that was 78th in the NBA. A star player at 78th, right behind Kelly Olynyk and basically Karis LeVert, who is so contact diverse. If you watched him with the Pacers, you know exactly what he likes to do in the lane. That's get up floaters or shimmy around guys. He does not want to go through people. He does not want to draw fouls. Tyrese Haliburton, very similarly. In free throw rate, which is literally just your free throw attempts divided by your shot attempts. So if you take a lot of shots, that number is going to go down. If you never shoot, but you get fouled sometimes, you're going to have a high number here. Dwight Powell led the league in this stat. But either way, free throw rate, kind of telling, right? Ben Mathurin shines in this stat. Lots of very star players shine in this stat. Tyrese Haliburton ranks 131st in the NBA. 2 spots ahead of Aaron Nesmith, right? This is not a strength of Tyrese Haliburton, just getting to the foul line. And he's a great free throw shooter, right? 85% or better every season of his career. That's extremely efficient. That's 1.7 points per possession. Basically, every player in the league's most efficient outcome for a possession is getting to the foul line. Tyrese Haliburton is included in that everyone group. So I wonder, can he up those numbers? But the follow-up question I would have to that is it actually good or required for Tyrese Haliburton to get all the way to the rim and be this foul drawing guy? Like, does it matter? Because it clearly what he was doing 2 years ago when he was ascending as this ball handler score type, and he was talking about it. There were stories coming out about how Drew Hanlon was like, hey, if you want to be an all-star, you got to shoot more. But he was kind of fighting the internal battle of shooting and not shooting. And so he was learning, I feel like 2 seasons ago with the Pacers, what he needed to do to finish around the basket effectively, even when he was avoiding contact. And he had this weird hook shot that went in enough that he kept taking it, but not enough that he should have kept taking it. And people kept calling it the Hallie hook. And then he abandoned that. And then he would pass more from the lane. And then he would get some finishes, but not enough. Last year, he got a lot better at some of the finishing in the lane and added way more of a floater. I think the signature shot of his career so far is a floater, and that matters a lot. But a floater is a very contact-averse shot, fittingly on the iconic one for his career. He did get fouled, but it's just been very interesting to see how he's progressed as a player in the lane, where most guys draw fouls. Is he does not seek out the contact. He doesn't try to go through guys, because he's a little thinner. He's tall, but he's a little thinner, and that makes sense. Like, that's fine. So that's why I have this question. Is it actually good or required for him to be better, to actually get all the way to the rim and draw those fouls? Because his style of play doesn't necessarily say, hey, this guy should be playing differently. He should be getting to the lane and reacting differently to what the defense is doing. And yet, every player would like to take more free throws because it's very good. Last year, he shot 59.2% from 0 to 3 feet. That's, first of all, insane and a very under-discussed part of his growth, that from 3 to 10 feet, he was a 1.2 points per possession guy, basically. That's a hard shot distance to get down, especially for guys who are moving really fast and making a lot of decisions. So, like, that is good. That's also 0.5 points per possession worse than free throws, right? So that's the kind of balance he has to strike, is like being really lethal from there is good. He should be taking them if it's open. He should be taking them even when it's not open sometimes. He's that good at finishing there. But he still has to work in getting to the line as much as he possibly can as a star. And I always think back to him talking about how he knows sometimes that him passing is a little bit being selfish, which sounds ironic, but with how efficient he is and how efficient his self-created shots are, it's best for the team sometimes for him to go for it, right? The next step of going for it is drawing fouls, getting contact. We know he can finish. We know defenders react to him when he gets a half step on anybody. Can he make defenses pay in a way that gets him to the foul line 4.5, 5 times a game, for example? I always thought that was something for Sabonis. I always thought that was something for, and Sabonis was not contact averse. I always thought it was something for LeVert. I definitely thought it was something for TJ Warren. I called scouts and did a whole story on it, right? It's a thing for good scores a lot of the time, but in Haliburton's star status case specifically, I think it's really important for better efficiency and to force foul trouble from opponents if he can get just a tick better, just a tick at drawing fouls. Because I'm not really sure like a fast-paced guy who's begging for contact will ever be an elite foul drawer, right? Nothing about Tyrese Haliburton screams that he's going to be a top 10, 20, whatever free throw rate guy. That's fine. He's amazing. He leads a top 5 offense just in his sleep, basically. But what does it really mean as a star, right? Being top 40 or 30, in free throw rate seems totally reasonable. It seems like not low-hanging fruit. It's not easy to make that big of a jump, but some sort of improvement there, forcing reactions from a defense for them to go, uh-oh, I had to guard this guy, but I can't foul him. Uh-oh, he came right at me. What do I do now? Like that kind of thinking and reaction and adjustment in his game, whatever that kind of little tweak would be. Maybe that's something he can take from a lot of guys on Team USA who are very good at this skill, but that would be, to me, the question I have about Tyrese Haliburton's coming season is, what does that part of his growth look like? Because that, to me, beyond all the stuff I already talked about, would be something that boosts his floor. Right? Last year he had a lot of, even including that stretch where he was injured, a lot of nights where he, like, if he was getting blitzed or trapped or all these things, would just be like, yeah, it's fine. If I have 12 assists and 15 points, we'll still win. That's fine. But those nights where he is just like lost for answers, which are super infrequent, would be even less if he had another thing in the bag, like getting to the line. So I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like, because he is, I think, I'd have to double check this, but I believe last year he finished last among all the players who were all-stars in free throw rate. I'd have to double check that, but I remember saying that or researching that at some point. I didn't do it for this podcast, but that's unusual. So bumping that up would be the next step for him, and I'm looking forward to seeing if he can do it or what that actually looks like for his game. Let's start talking about some TJ McConnell. We talked about him last week a little bit, and I think people misheard me, so I want to clear something up before I ask about TJ McConnell and his role adjustment to the return of a certain other player. Before we get to any of that, though, we have got to talk about the lovely folks over at FanDuel. NFL fans, you can start and continue this season with a huge return on FanDuel. They're America's #1 sportsbook. Football's been rolling. NFL's run. Colts finally in the win column. Whew, dramatic game, but they got it done. When you have a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Very convenient. So you don't have to be flipping back and forth and get off the pages. You can just hop on over to FanDuel. All of it's right there. All the stats you could want. I'm a stats guy. No more flipping back and forth between pages. And you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets on FanDuel, guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just again, put $5 in there. Boom, $200 in bonus bets. That's guaranteed. And that's all on FanDuel.com. We're back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Your second listen should be Locked On 76ers. Joel Embiid, huge extension. Joel Embiid is very good, and that one immediately still made me message people and go, yikes. That guy gets hurt a lot. That's scary, but he's an amazing player, and if he's healthy at all, the Sixers could be awesome in the next couple of years with this core that they have. Keith Pompey and the group over at Locked On Sixers can tell you more about that, what it means for Philly. Let's talk about TJ McConnell first by me saying, last week I did my yearly questions about veterans show and talked about TJ McConnell and my question was, what does age 33 look like for a guy who peaked at 32? And I think people interpreted that as me questioning that he could build off of last year, or that he can't be better or stay the same. That's not at all what I was doing. I was asking what it looks like for a guy to have a season after peaking at 32. I've never seen someone peak at 32. I don't know what comes next, and I want to see it. What does that actually look like? I can't wait to find out. And people were like, wow, you after the season he had, and you were wrong about him, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, I got some things wrong, but like, that's not what I was saying at all. And now I'm going to make it very clear when I'm asking about TJ McConnell. This is more basketball specific, is can he do what he just did again when Bennedict Mathurin returns? Because something I did get right talking about McConnell's season last year was when Mathurin got hurt in early March, and after that Mavs game, people were talking about who needs to step up and what needs to change and all this stuff, and that's great. And okay, Ben Shepherd's going to play a lot, and there's more opportunity there. Maybe Jarrett's plays, blah, blah. I said TJ McConnell is going to be the biggest factor here. He's going to have the ball more. He's going to have more chances. If he is better, if he's up for the task, that is how they survive this the best, because they lost a lot of second unit ball handling. And he's very good at that stuff. So now, and then he was amazing, right? The stats were just absurd. TJ McConnell pre-injury to Ben Mathurin was like a 9 points a game guy. Post was like a 14 points a game guy, right? And then his assists remained about the same. For some reason, my basketball reference tab's all refreshed since I started recording, so my stats went away. But thankfully, I have that one remembered, right? So my question is, we just saw McConnell be absurdly good, right? Like best isolation scorer in the NBA. 8.9 points, 5.5 assists per game. Pre-Mathurin injury, 13.9 points, 5.4 assists posts, right? So similar level of passer, absurdly better score, right? So what happens now? Similar to my question about the age thing with him. What happens now? Can he do this again with Mathurin back? Like last year, what I would point to is, if you just look at PvP stats, they has usage data with on-off numbers. When playing without Jarris Walker, TJ McConnell's usage was 25.9%, almost 26. When he was playing with Ben Mathurin, I don't know if I just said Jarris Walker for some reason. TJ McConnell with Mathurin, 25.9% usage. Without Mathurin, 21.3% usage, right? Big swing, 4.5% usage. That's a big deal. His scoring, obviously, like I just said, is way lower. So what happens now? Can he produce the same results? But if he does, what does that mean for Ben Mathurin? Because I think McConnell can. They've clearly shown if he has the ball out, he can do stuff. That's great. I bet he could do it again with Mathurin standing right next to him, standing over on the wing. But what does that mean for Mathurin's production? Is he now not scoring as often? Does it matter if he's not scoring as often? Who should the ball be flowing through, right? That kind of balance will be very fascinating to me now that we and the Pacers, even on big stages, have seen what that looks like. So let's talk about some other numbers that bleed into this. And the next flow of things I'm about to say are not meant to be an indictment of any player or a support of any sort of change or lineup or anything like that. Last year, full season, all 82 games, the Pacers 46.8 points per game from their bench. That led the NBA. Their plus minus with bench lineups on the floor, whatever the NBA classes as bench points, because they have a bench stat on their site, was 0.8 plus 0.8. So a second unit that outscores the other team. That was 8th in the NBA. That's great. That was one of their superpowers all season. Post Ben Mathurin injury, the bench averaged 45.1 points per game. That's worse. But their plus minus was plus 2.9 per game. This is a month, not a full season, but that happened. And that was the fourth best number in the league, that plus minus. Now, pre-Mathurin injury, their bench was changing a ton, especially in the month and a half leading up to it. The Siakam trade, then Hield's gone, and let's try this lineup. No, let's try this lineup. Even you go back a month, they changed their starters, which was great. Their starters were better, but their bench wasn't as good. So there's a lot of pre that injury, how do you even put all this together? In the first 12 games when Ben Mathurin started, the Pacers bench averaged 50.8 points per game, which is really good, but their plus minus was 9th ranked in the league. And McConnell wasn't even playing in some of those games, right? Their bench was really good without McConnell in that stretch. So it's really hard to kind of cut through this and say, what does this mean? What does this look like? What this kind of points to is just that the Pacers are really deep and they have really good benches. And late in the season, when they were doing this thing where the bench would just beat other team starters and seal games, McConnell was everything. And that continued to be the case for a lot of time. But it's really hard to point to a lot of just well, without this guy, they were sunk, or without that guy, they were sunk. They just had really good bench groups. And McConnell was obviously always a bench guy, but he was a big part of it. But digging through those numbers makes me just wonder, if there was no stretch from the Mathurin going to the bench stretch to when he got hurt. So that's November 20th to March 5th. The Pacers bench was a dead even plus minus, slightly over that in that moment. So even then, good bench. So lots of units worked. Lots of bench groups worked. McConnell was the engine that took it to oh my gosh, plus 3 per game. That's insane. They were scoring less. They weren't playing as much. They were fighting for a playoff seed, whatever. So all that leads me to say, now that they're both projected to be the bench backcourt, what does that mean for each other? Because this is a McConnell segment. So I think he can do what he just did again, if he's given the rope to do so. But should he be? Or should some of that go towards Ben Mathurin, this ascending young star who can really score? Or should it be, McConnell clearly leads to lots of winning right now? Or could it be, hey, Mathurin's also leading to a lot of winning right now, right? There's so much balance that I'm curious about, and it's just as much a McConnell question as a Mathurin question. But given how McConnell's season ended, where he had this insanely good stretch where he was one of the Pacers' best players, I just wonder what that looks like now. Because the trade-off isn't going to be what it is last year. Last year, there was the bench is getting worse. Some of those stretches I just talked about, the bench is getting worse, but it's okay. The starters are getting way better by this lineup change, and that made the Pacers win more games. This year, that's not going to happen, right? We have a really good sense of what the starting lineup is going to be, and I will predict that lasts much longer than it has past seasons. It was still the right choice for the Pacers to make those switches. So how's this all going to work? Can McConnell be great and score 12 to 14 points a game, which is career numbers for him, and dish out the assist numbers he had and drive and make defenses rotate and all that? Can he do all that at the level he did at this down the stretch of last season, while also having Mathurin, A, develop, which is important, B, continue to be Ben Mathurin and be a 15 points per game scorer, and C, make the Pacers bench hum and work? So all three of those together, there was always like 2.5 parts of that happening last year, right? No, they weren't taking away from each other. There was never a problem. And I'm not trying to insinuate there is a problem. I just want to know what it's going to look like now. It's obvious McConnell is much better on the ball. Not better than Mathurin, to be clear, but better like compared to his off the ball version, which is relevant because sometimes that does happen when they played these 2-point guard lineups last year. So it's very obvious TJ McConnell is a better on-ball player than off-ball player. Duh. But Mathurin's usage also was down without McConnell. He gets the ball more when he plays with TJ McConnell. So that means McConnell's off the ball when they play together. He gets less touches with starters, which intuitively makes sense for Ben Mathurin because the starting lineup has a clear hierarchy of who should and shouldn't have the ball. So a lot of numbers say that like this is going to be something that they have to maybe not figure out. It's not problematic. It's not bad. It's not detracting, but something they just have to like establish the right hierarchy to make stuff hum because they still Mathurin's good, right? This isn't like is he contributing or not, but he's developing and they need to develop him and they need to give him the reps to do so, which is harder now that their goals are all about winning. And so this becomes a McConnell question for me after the season he just had of he was such a vital part of their late season ascendance. So what does this look like now that he has to balance that while also playing with this young stud? And maybe Mathurin answers the question for McConnell and it's just so good. None of the stuff I just said matters at all. I just threw a lot of numbers at you. I threw a lot of here's what the bench was like this time and that time and that time. And now I want to know what it's going to look like this coming season. And Mathurin will have some similar questions. We'll do him on the shooting guards episode later this week. Let's talk about one more point guard who's going to start at the 2, but is a lead ball handler, sort of. That's Andrew Nembhard. One more to close out today's show. Before we talk some Andrew Nembhard, we got to talk about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and plenty more. Whether you are into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered because with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you were looking for. Plus, with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time. You're just going to get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home some huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay's Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. We're back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Your second listen should be Locked On Colts. The local football team, they won. They did it. They beat the Bears. The Bears aren't very good. The Colts played better than them. Jonathan Taylor was great. Anthony Richardson was not. I only know this stuff from the timeline. Shout out to Zach Hicks and James Boyd, all my Colts people, for keeping me up to date. Locked On Colts, where Zach Hicks can be heard to hear more about the now 1-2 Colts, whose deep run defense was pretty good against the Bears, according to other people. I did not see the game. Let's talk about Andrew Nembhard. He's just so rock solid. Such a rock solid player. Very interesting to kind of preview what kind of question I had for him because he doesn't have a lot of stuff that he just stinks at that I think he needs to be better at, or his role's super obvious to me, right? In fact, so many of his per minute stats from year 2 were like identical to year 1, which is weird because he was clearly a better player. But points per 36 went from 12.3 to 13.3. Assists per 36 were exactly the same, 5.9. Steals went from 1.2 to 1.3. Blocks went from 0.2 to 0.1. Turnovers, 2.2 to 2.1. Fouls, 3.1 to 3.0. Rebounds, 3.5 to 3.0. Like all so similar within a number at most, right? So it's very clear what this guy is, what Andrew Nembhard is, what he can do. But he was clearly better last year. And I think a lot of that was efficiency because that is not a rate number. That is an accuracy number. He shot 0.007% better from 3, but much better, 6.5% better on 2s, and was better from the foul line on greater per minute volume from the foul line. So that all led to a 5.5 point growth, 4.5, in true shooting percentage. That combined with defensive improvement made him a much better player, even though his statistical season looked very similar from year 1 to 2. His skills are very obvious, what he can do. So can he take a big jump, right? They paid him like a very solid starting guard. Can he explode in some way as like a scorer, a passer, a defender, a shooter? Like these are fair questions to ask about a good player entering his third season. To me, the thing that seems like the most likely of that stuff I just said would be shooting, just because of the role coming Andrew Nembhard's way. Like if he knocks down 40 to 42% of his threes, he's going to look awesome. But if he's not going to take this huge jump as a scorer, which seems unlikely, they have lots of guys who are going to have the ball, or a passer, seems like unlikely. They have a lot of guys who are going to demand the ball and should have it. Maybe he takes a huge leap as a defender. That's certainly possible. He is 6'4", so there's not a ton of guys he can like permanently guard. But either way, that's why shooter seems the most likely. But beyond just like a massive leap in a key skill, what kind of things, right? What kind of small things can make Andrew Nembhard bloom again, right? Like how his efficiency made him look better last year with similar stats. What could that be this year? I have a hunch. And my question is, what will it be? What will the thing be that makes Andrew Nembhard bloom in year 3? Because the Pacers paid him like a guy that's going to bloom. I think he's really good. I thought he was really good before last year. I still think fans think I overrate him, and that's fine. I'm going to keep talking about him as the player I think he is. But what could that be? I think the most obvious thing, and the thing I want to spend a little bit of time on here, is turnovers, right? Even when he had that dominant summer league game to start his 2023 summer league, still had a ton of turnovers that game. And everybody said, oh, you didn't dominate that much. You turned it over too much. And he was amazing, but he turned it over a lot, right? And that last season, he finished with a turnover rate of 15.6%. That was actually the highest number on the Pacers, right? That I did not know that was the highest number on the Pacers. I knew it was high, but not the highest on the team. Per 100, almost 3 turnovers. Per 36, over 2 turnovers, right? Over 100 both seasons of his career. Like that's probably his biggest problem. And it's weird because it feels like, I don't know if you guys feel this way. To me, it feels like he gets to his 2 turnover average by having like 1-0, 1-0, 8, 1-0, something like that, where there's just some games where his handle feels really loose or his vision feels really sloppy. He had 10 games with 3 or more last year, including 3 games with 6. That's just terrible, right? And so like those games have to be few and far between and drop in frequency, obviously. But that's kind of what it feels like to me. Yeah, he had I can't do quick enough math. 18 games with 0 turnovers. And oh man, I'm terrible at this. And 20 games with 1 turnover, right? So that's almost half his season was either 0 or 1 turnover, and yet his turnover rate's pretty high because he has these games where they just pop off the page where, like I said, handles looser, passes aren't as crisp, which is very strange, right? So if he just like, I'm not saying he's unfocused, but if those games are just crisper and he's more locked in for those, that helps a lot. And that could go a long way. And maybe that's something about the way the defense is pressuring him or just some desync of the offense. But that seems like the thing to me that would make Andrew Nembhard bloom this year. Is he's already good. He's already solid. He already provides things at the guard spot that none of the other guards on the Pacers can really do, right? So can he become what made O'Shea Brissett so good? Can he never really mess up, right? Does he never turn it over? Does he not get beat on defense very much? Like everybody's going to miss shots, but the stuff that we would all classify as mistakes, can he cut those down? I think that would make him look really effective, especially if he shoots really well. Threes could be the other thing that makes him bloom. And I think last year people have this weird perception of his shooting. And I just said it. His percentage was 35.7% from 3 last year. That's like exactly league average. But that's not like fair to me. He was banged up at the first part of the season. He had the kidney stone. He had the back injury. He got hurt in the in-season tournament. Pre-in-season tournament, actually really through the in-season tournament finals, he was at 24.3% from 3. That's bad. That's going to stick with people. That's a long stretch of a first impression. From the end of the in-season tournament to the end of the year, 39% from deep. That's great. If he can shoot 40%, 39, 38 for a whole season, I think everybody will say, oh, yeah, that guy's a good shooter, like a good enough shooter. Or can he push it to even 40, 42% and then look like an awesome player? If he's exactly the same guy again, a two-way player, slightly above average efficiency, does he still finish as the ideal fit on the roster next to Haliburton? Is he the best guy? That kind of is a Mathurin question. Does Mathurin take a spot to someone else ascend? But he's a great fit next to Haliburton already, and already does a lot of things that make him extremely valuable. And that's why the Pacers paid him like an extremely valuable player. So even if he's the exact same player, there's no concern because I think he's good, but I think he's going to be better. And so what does that actually look like? Year 3 is always a big year for these young guys. What does that actually look like for him? What does that look like on the floor in terms of what skills he actually gets better at to make him a better player and make the Pacers a better team? That's what I'll be very curious about because he's just such a straightforward guy, right? He's going to guard. He's going to make shots, and he's just clearly good at a lot of stuff. So can he be elite at anything? Why? I'm looking forward to seeing it, especially after they paid him. This was fun for me to dive into some nerdery and still to preview the season of players. Let me know if you like this general format of just asking questions about guys. What's the big deal is what I wanted to call this series, and I never even said that until now. So the big deal next will be the shooting guards, Ben Mathurin, Ben Shepherd, and I'm grandfathering. That's not even the right term. I'm putting Cole Swider in this group because someone of the Neesmith Walker Furphy group had to be in the twos. Congrats to Cole Swider. You get to be in the shooting guard section, which will come later this week. Tomorrow, we'll see. If you have an idea for a show, you get a rare chance. Tomorrow is the last day of like true off-season, air quotes, content for me, where I don't have a plan. I can come up with something very easily. I have lots of like half-baked ideas. But if you want me to talk about something specific, tomorrow's a good day to do it because Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, very easy for me. And then next Monday, media day for the Pacers. They're off and running. So 1 day gap here to squeeze in something if you've got any ideas. But Wednesday, you'll hear from Derek Kramer again. Big stuff to talk about then. You'll see. And then we'll do the shooting guards one this week. And I want to do the no fun episode of the summer is some worst case scenarios for the Pacers here. We're going to hold them down from having the season that people want. I'll figure out who the right guest is for something like that later this week. Hope you guys enjoyed today's show. I am on Twitter or X at Locked On Pacers, tweeting a lot about the Fever. They're in the playoffs right now. If you want to check out coverage of that, you can find that on my Twitter feed. And this podcast is at Locked On Pacers. Also, there's going to be a YouTube channel from me where you can see behind the scenes Pacers and Fever stuff. If you just type in like Tony East Pacers Fever, you'll find it. If you could subscribe, that'd be really swell. Thanks a ton, everybody, for listening today. Back tomorrow talking more Pacers. Till then, everybody have a wonderful day.